In related news, a FeesMustFall student committee will be established to work with Justice Minister Michael Masutha on a plan to grant amnesty to protesters who face criminal charges. Our reporter Sipho Stuurman has been tracking this story for us and filed this report.
The Justice Minister will approach NPA on behalf of the students to individually review each case and see if there are alternative ways of justice being meted out instead of taking the students straight to court. But seemingly, the students are not satisfied with this announcement that they will be assisted in terms of going to the NPA and reviewing each case. But the minister, of course, emphasizing that NPA will not be pressured into dropping any cases or any charges against students, but they will look at each individual case. And the students, as I said, they're not satisfied. And I'm joined by one such student, Bongengosi Kaninyele. Thank you very much. You were here, you spoke your mind, and you said you're not quite happy. Why?
No, I'm not quite happy because when we began, we were saying, because what has happened under a political turmoil. The government and all institutions of the state, they ought to respond to it politically. And the state, the minister comes and he becomes a typical politician. He lectures us about the constitution and all other issues therefore. We're saying we want all FeesMustFall activists to be given amnesty and to be pardoned. And what the minister should have came and said is to say, how are we going to enroll a plan of pardoning them and giving them amnesty?
But this announcement, it seems like it's a plan because they're saying they'll be assisting students in terms of approaching NPA. Is that not a plan?
It's not a plan. He says he's going to look at individual case. We say there must be a general amnesty. A general amnesty and pardon to all FeesMustFall. It means you take all cases, you combine them, and you act in collective rather than looking at them individually. So that plan of his, it's a plan of which we're going to monitor it closely. We're going to unleash our community of students and see how can we best work with the plan that is proposing. But we don't trust it because he's not responding to our demands.
What his plan outlines, it outlines a very procedural way in terms of respecting, the rule of law and, approaching the NPA to review cases. It's something that is done in the legal course when looking at charges that NPA may, impose on individuals. So are you saying that you're not respecting this legal system that we have and all these legal procedures that are currently underway?
We respect them very fundamental and very primary. We are we respect the legal institutions and everything else. We say, if the minister says he's cornered by legal, he must call legal people, come up and create something that can pardon all. The minister must agree that what happened because it had to happen. And the minister must come and say, we also faltered as the state, because the violence and all what has happened was first unleashed by the state, and what students did was a response towards the state. Then he must go engage legally and all other institutions come up with a combined plan. That is legally so.
Okay. Now let's just talk, because part of the reports following FeesMustFall was that the damage to university property was up to $1 billion worth. So how are students going to take responsibility for their part? Yes, a legitimate struggle, but there was this damage. So how do students then take responsibility?
One thing, my brother, I'm in a relationship with my woman. I beat her up continuously. Again and again and again. She decides one day to respond. When she responds, she stabs me. And you run first you go to police. And she's arrested. Then you come and say, no, we must see how does she take responsibility of that you are now sustaining stitches. We say government unleashed terror on students first, and students then responded. So you yourself who unleashed terror, you must take responsibility on the behavior of those students who are like that. You are the one who must be held accountable for making students to seem as if they are violent, because you are the one who have unleashed violence. And again, government have never came out clearly and apologized that we've assaulted students, we've attacked them, we've done all manner of things. Has never said that publicly.
Right. So and also speaking of the violence, of course, now this weekend we have the news of the T2 student that passed out. Just speak to us about that.
Yeah, we're going there actually to go and see that student. And we are saying those who are protesting for those who shot our fellow brother to death, they must continue to do so. They must push for it. They must not stop until they are brought into books. And that thing proves it's a microcosm of the bigger issue that we are faced with. It's what happened during FeesMustFall. They did that with endorsement from the state, and when students responded, the media runs to students and say they are violent. They love buildings, the property, more than the lives of students. No one is saying now the students have died. Look how police are. In TUT, they will next ban a building. When you ban the building, you'll then arrest a student and deny a bail, like the states normally do. So we say, comrades, continue social move, push until the guy who shot our fellow comrade is brought into books.
All right, thank you very much. That is Abongosi Kanyile just giving his thoughts after that media briefing by the Minister of Justice, Michael Masutha, outlining the steps that they'll be taking in terms of assisting the students. But certainly, Bongengosi here is not satisfied, and they will continue calling for students to be pardoned immediately, and that is all students. And they're saying this process that is outlined here, they are not satisfied with it. And with that, it's back to you in studio.
Sipho